I think being adaptive to change is an overall desirable trait. It's something that I would routinely write in job applications, that I was adaptable and flexible, as if writing that out suddenly cemented my ability to meet the ever-fluctuating demands of the market. But between you and me, I am terrified of change. To be clear, I don't reject change. I think change is an overall positive thing. But the process of adapting to change, or the idea that I would need to adapt to change, legitimately makes me anxious to no end. I am an ardent creature of habit and sentiment. I am someone who forms a lot of attachment on people and places and very arbitrary things. I get anxious in the process of moving houses because it would mean I would have to get used to grocery shopping in a whole new supermarket with a whole different layout. And now I wouldn't know where they stock the very specific thing if I suddenly decided that I needed it one day. So if changing supermarkets can bring me this much turmoil, you can imagine how difficult this past season of my life has been. My parents moved away from a city I thought would be my hometown forever. I graduated uni. I went through heartbreak. I moved to a city that itself has been through a lot of change in the past few years. I settled into a new campus and into a new academic program, knowing close to nothing about what I was getting into and no one who would be in the trenches with me. It was change on change on change in literally every possible aspect of my life. For the first 5 months of being in Hong Kong, I hated being here. A classic case of it's not you, it's me, because it's really not Hong Kong's fault. I think I was just unable to fully let go of my attachment to the previous chapter of my life. Sometimes I wonder if this attachment is to London, the city itself, or London, the uni experience. Because London, the city, I took to almost immediately. I don't know why this was the case, because I complained incessantly about the inefficiency, the crime, and the stench of weed. But London was really such an easy place to call home for the last 2 years. Because if London were a person, it would be analogous to a first love. There's a lot to love about London. The architecture, the parks, the coffee, the museums, the musicals. But more importantly, London was a city that was a catalyst of tremendous growth and independence. There is a specific patch of grass at Regent's Park where I think I fell in love for the first time, and I know the exact park bench I sat to nurse my first big heartbreak. It was a puppy love, the way I loved London through rose-colored glasses, not needing to think about the realities of making rent or paying bills. But like a first love, reality eventually sets. A job and the pressure to make responsible choices made it so that London and I couldn't make it to endgame. At the same time, I think my London experience was largely informed by the uni bubble that I lived in. Because going to uni in London also meant that my friends were always within arm's reach. We would see each other in class and then spontaneously make dinner plans, or I'd drop into someone's room and we accidentally end up talking for 2 hours. I could be sitting at home at 2 a.m. and 30 minutes later I would be in the library with my friend productively procrastinating together. This was a luxury that only uni students can afford. So the move to Hong Kong meant the sudden loss of 2 things: a life in a city that I loved, and the easy accessibility and proximity to many of my friends. In contrast, Hong Kong was a city where I felt I existed in between. I did not grow up here, yet by all accounts of lineage and heritage, I was from here. My entire extended family is here, but this is also the family that often saw me as an outsider. I speak the language, but I do not understand the colloquialisms of humor and slang that come with it. I had few friends, and it felt hard to connect with new people and make new friends. And even with the friends I already had, some of us were just no longer in the same life stage anymore. You'd argue that this is all a part of growing up, that this is simply how it is when you move across the world to a new city. I know this, but the fact of the matter was still that I felt a distinct lack of personal connection to Hong Kong. Without a social circle and without a community, I felt deeply unrooted. It definitely didn't help that my parents had moved away from Shanghai, so I no longer really had a permanent home that I could crawl back to when times got tough. Because if London was my first love, then Shanghai was a mother. In this city that I had known for 20 years, existing feels just as easy as breathing. There is now no room in this world where traces of my childhood can be found strewn haphazardly between bookshelves. Suddenly, the 4 blue walls in my new Hong Kong flat are the only semi-permanent home that I have. My childhood diary or my 7th grade math book will never see these walls, and I don't know which box in which storage room they currently live in now. A Redditor asks, how long does it take a plant to set new roots after repotting? A Redditor replies, assuming that light, soil, and watering are all ideal, a few months would be reasonable until new growth is seen. Plus, we are going into winter. Some parts of Hong Kong is still old soil for me. Familiar sights, familiar sounds, but most importantly, familiar faces. Although making friends was a slow start, the bottom line was I still did have friends here to start with. Some are old faces, people from earlier chapters who have become permanent in my life. So even if I did feel very lonely at times, I knew that there would always be someone I could call. We are no longer living in the same building on campus anymore, but the willingness to sit somewhere and just talk still remains. Some are still new faces, but people I would still consider friends nonetheless. Now I get to have the chance to deepen some of these earlier friendships that I thought would only last a season. I am also grateful that I can finally be in the same city as most of my extended family. Big gatherings over birthdays and weddings are no longer a plane ride away. My cousin's kids have nicknames for me now, and as a freshly minted adult, I get to take some mental load off my parents by taking my grandma to her hospital appointments. As much of an adjustment it has been to live with my parents again, I know I'm lucky I get to spend this much time with them now. I get to cultivate these relationships that I would otherwise not have been able to do if I still lived abroad. To make a city home, you have to find ways to make it yours. But since school threw me into the deep end, a large part of my unease in Hong Kong was simply because I did not have the time to figure out how to claim this city as mine. Slowly but surely, there are pockets of Hong Kong that are mine now. I have a favorite seat in a favorite cafe. I know where to get fresh noodles and dumplings. I can tell you where to go to chase a sunset. I cook to feel more grounded. I made new friends. I go on a tram when I want time to slow down, and I sit by the sea when I feel sad. Recently, I learned to stop shopping for overpriced produce in supermarkets, and I'm slowly learning how to navigate the local wet market stalls. I arrived in the sweltering summer, and now we are through the worst of winter. It took me half a year to find these snippets of belonging, and finally, belonging feels easier than leaving. It's a tired story, the one about the young 20-something who just graduated uni and is suddenly lost about what to do with their life. Naively, I thought I would be exempt from this narrative. I had a job lined up before graduation, so in my mind, the next 3 years of postgrad was very neatly set out. Everything else afterwards would probably just as neatly fall into place. But the feelings of being lost still found me. I think a lot about the concept of change because I am someone who resists it, but at the same time, I am someone who craves it. There are days where I can't wait to start the big law lawyer life, and there are days where I itch to undo this neat path that I've created for myself. To tear up the tiles and map my own roads with a sort of reckless abandon and throw all expectations of doing a traditional career out the window. There are days where I want to put my roots down and call a place a forever home, but then there are days where I want to have lived in every city I've ever loved, like New York or Melbourne or Shanghai or London. But then I think about the sacrifices I would have to make for that lifestyle. I think about who would take care of my parents when they age, the relocation money that could have otherwise been a down payment, and then I go back to being unsure again. But if late at night I still dream of change, at which point do I pull the trigger? At which point will I grow the courage to throw away my attachment to the familiar so I can grow into the person I want to be? I understand that at 23, I do not need to have it figured out. I keep telling myself that I am not supposed to have it figured out. 23 is an odd age to be. A lot of things I do can easily be justified with I don't know any better, but equally can be counteracted with I should know better. But a lot has changed in the last couple of years, and I'm sure the things I don't know and things I should know will only continue to change. I read diary entries from 2 years ago, and I barely recognize myself. I think it's comforting to see growth scribbled out on the pages like this.
Like falling?
佢係咪錄緊佢自己？
Oh, I am.
我驚。
She was like, are you recording yourself? Now I have a demonic cat and someone's frying them.
Hello. 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 Bye bye. Press everyone. Hello. Hello. How are you guys?
Hi. I didn't say it on camera. I didn't say it on camera. So white. I know. The lightest.
Oh shit.